The Caribbean's turquoise waters, once a symbol of leisure and commerce, now host a tense military standoff. The United States has deployed a powerful naval and air force off Venezuela's coast, citing a crackdown on drug trafficking and labeling President Maduro's government a narco-terrorist regime. These moves, far from subtle, mark a dramatic escalation in a long-simmering conflict, shifting from economic pressure to open military intimidation. As bombers roar overhead and warships patrol the seas, the world wonders, is this truly about drugs or the prelude to regime change in Caracas? The region holds its breath, caught in the shadow of a gathering storm. The U.S. military presence in the Caribbean is unprecedented, marking a significant escalation in both scale and visibility. Not since the tense days of the Cuban Missile Crisis has the region witnessed such a formidable show of American force, drawing clear historical parallels to one of the most dangerous moments of the Cold War. At the heart of this deployment is the USS Gerald R. Ford, the world's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier, serving as a floating fortress. It is flanked by a powerful strike group of destroyers, cruisers, and the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, forming a modern armada that projects overwhelming power across the region. Special Operations Forces operate from the secretive MV Ocean Trader, a vessel designed for covert missions and rapid deployment, while a U.S. Navy submarine lurks beneath the waves, its presence a silent but potent deterrent. In the skies above, B-1B and B-52 bombers, F-35B stealth fighters, and AV-8 Harriers conduct highly visible patrols, their flight paths a constant reminder of American air superiority and rapid strike capability. These aircraft are supported by P-8 Poseidon patrol planes and MQ-9 Reaper drones, providing persistent surveillance, intelligence gathering, and real-time reconnaissance over vast stretches of ocean. On the ground, Puerto Rico has become a critical forward base. Here, U.S. Air Force personnel work around the clock, stockpiling munitions, repairing runways, and ensuring that every aircraft and piece of equipment is ready for immediate action. This is not a routine patrol. It's a fully combat-ready force, with armed jets and bombers on alert, naval and air assets poised to launch a full-scale operation at a moment's notice. Every asset, from heavy bombers to advanced surveillance drones, signals a posture that goes far beyond traditional counter-narcotics missions, demonstrating a readiness for any contingency. The message is unmistakable. The United States is prepared for any scenario, determined to defend its interests and allies with overwhelming force if necessary. On October 23, two U.S. B-1B Lancer bombers flew to within 50 miles of Venezuela's coast, their transponders on for all to see. This was no covert mission. It was a deliberate show of force, echoing a similar B-52 flight just days earlier. The B-1Bs, capable of carrying massive payloads of precision-guided munitions, were joined by F-35B stealth fighters from Puerto Rico. The Pentagon released photos, ensuring the world and Caracas got the message. Supported by aerial refueling tankers, the operation demonstrated seamless integration of air power. Flying strategic bombers so close to Venezuela, without a declared war, is a coercive signal. The U.S. can strike at will. For Venezuela, it's a stark reminder of their vulnerability. For the world, a sign of dangerous escalation. The pressure is mounting, and the stakes are rising. The Trump administration frames this buildup as an unprecedented counter-narcotics operation, targeting transnational criminal organizations. This initiative is presented as a necessary step to combat the growing influence of drug cartels that are believed to be operating with impunity in the region. The administration argues that these criminal networks are not just a local problem, but a global threat that requires a robust and immediate response. Venezuela, under Maduro, is labeled a narco-state, and more recently, a narco-terrorist regime. This classification is used to justify a range of aggressive actions, including economic sanctions and military posturing. The U.S. government claims that Maduro's regime is deeply involved in the drug trade, using it as a means to finance its operations and maintain power. This designation allows the U.S. to invoke post-9/11 counterterrorism authorities, blurring the line between law enforcement and war. By treating drug traffickers as terrorists, the administration gains access to a broader set of tools and resources, including military force. This shift in strategy marks a significant escalation in the U.S. approach to combating drug-related crime. Indictments have been unsealed against Maduro and top officials, with a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head. These legal actions are part of a broader strategy to delegitimize and destabilize the Maduro regime. The U.S. hopes that by targeting the leadership, it can weaken the regime's grip on power and pave the way for a transition to a more favorable government. Secretary of Defense Hegseth declared, "We will hunt you down and we will kill you," equating drug traffickers with terrorists. This rhetoric is intended to send a clear message to those involved in the drug trade. The U.S. will use all means at its disposal to bring them to justice. The administration's hardline stance is designed to deter criminal activity and reassure the public that decisive action is being taken. The administration insists this is about justice, not politics, but the rhetoric justifies lethal force far beyond traditional anti-drug operations. Critics argue that this approach risks escalating violence and destabilizing the region further. They warn that the use of military force in what has traditionally been a law enforcement issue could have unintended consequences, including civilian casualties and increased anti-American sentiment. By redefining the enemy, the U.S. claims legal cover for strikes and special operations in Venezuela. This redefinition allows for a more aggressive posture and the use of tactics that would otherwise be considered extreme. The administration argues that these measures are necessary to protect national security and combat a growing threat. The world watches as the war on drugs morphs into something far more dangerous. The international community is divided, with some supporting the U.S. approach and others condemning it as reckless and counterproductive. As tensions rise, the potential for conflict increases, leaving many to wonder what the future holds for Venezuela and the region. Since September, U.S. forces have launched at least 10 lethal airstrikes on vessels near Venezuela, killing over 40 people. These strikes, carried out far from American shores, have sent shockwaves through the region and ignited fierce debate about their legality and necessity. AC-130 gunships and MQ-9 drones have turned suspected smuggler boats into targets, using advanced surveillance and precision weaponry to strike with little warning. Often, these attacks occur without public evidence of criminal activity, leaving families and communities in the dark about why their loved ones were targeted. The most recent strike destroyed a boat in open water, leaving behind only wreckage and unanswered questions. 6 alleged members of the Tren de Aragua gang, now officially designated as terrorists by the U.S., were killed in the attack, but their families insist they were fishermen, not criminals. Critics warn that the lack of transparency raises the risk of civilian casualties and abuse of power. Human rights groups are demanding independent investigations and greater accountability. The campaign has created a climate of fear among Venezuelan coastal communities, where rumors of drones and gunships haunt daily life. For many, fishing is not just a job, but a way of life passed down through generations, now threatened by the specter of sudden violence. Venezuela condemns the attacks as piracy and murder, calling them blatant violations of international law and national sovereignty. Officials accuse the U.S. of fabricating pretexts for intervention, fueling diplomatic tensions and sparking protests at home and abroad. The rules of engagement remain opaque, with little information released to the public or even to international observers. In these waters, suspicion alone can mean death from above, as boats are marked as threats with little recourse for those on board. Each strike pushes the two nations closer to open conflict, raising the stakes for the entire region. The risk of catastrophic error is high, with the potential for a single miscalculation to spark a much larger crisis. As the line between counter-narcotics and war vanishes, questions mount about the true objectives of these operations and the cost to innocent lives. The world is left to question the true motives behind these deadly operations and whether peace in the region is slipping further out of reach. The crisis is defined by the words of its leaders. President Trump projects strength, hinting at expanding strikes to land targets and suggesting action could precede congressional approval. His message, America's resolve is absolute, and the next move is unpredictable. From Caracas, Maduro pleads for peace, warning of a crazy war, and framing U.S. actions as imperialist aggression. He orders his military to high alert, vowing to defend Venezuela while condemning U.S. strikes as massacres. Maduro's dual message, pleading for de-escalation while promising resistance, reflects his precarious position. Both leaders' rhetoric fuels the standoff, where any miscalculation could trigger disaster. The world watches, hoping words don't become war. The legality of U.S. military action in the Caribbean is hotly debated at home and abroad. Critics argue the Trump administration is bypassing Congress, using broad post-9/11 authorities to justify strikes against alleged narco-terrorists. This legal stretch could set a precedent for unilateral presidential wars against non-state actors anywhere. The war powers resolution is being tested as never before, with the president claiming authority for strikes and possible invasions without congressional consent. International law is also at stake. The U.S. has not sought UN approval, risking diplomatic isolation. By striking near Venezuelan waters, the U.S. blurs the line between law enforcement and war, raising global alarm. The operation exists in a legal gray zone, where definitions are stretched and accountability is elusive. The consequences for American democracy and international order are profound. Many believe the real goal isn't just drug interdiction, but regime change in Venezuela. The scale of U.S. military power deployed far exceeds what's needed for counter-narcotics, fueling speculation that Maduro's ouster is the true aim. With domestic pressures mounting, a foreign crisis can rally support and distract from internal problems. Venezuela's vast oil reserves add another layer of motivation. A post-Maduro government could open these resources to U.S. interests. The operation also sends a message to regional adversaries and global rivals. The U.S. will act decisively in its own hemisphere. The war on drugs may be a convenient cover for a classic geopolitical power play. The stakes are as much about resources and influence as they are about crime. The region stands at a tipping point. Military forces are poised, rhetoric is heated, and lethal force is already in play. Continued escalation could cripple Maduro's regime or provoke a disastrous miscalculation. An errant airstrike or civilian deaths could trigger a Venezuelan military response, spiraling into war. The risk: a prolonged conflict, regional instability, and a humanitarian catastrophe. Some hope for diplomacy, but the path is narrow and fraught with mistrust. The world waits to see if this is a high-stakes bluff or the prelude to battle. Once military momentum builds, conflict becomes more likely, not less. The plea from Venezuela, "Don't make a crazy war," echoes the fears of millions on the brink.